collaboration with the Cyprus Mail. This is the Cyprus News Digest with Rosie Haralambous.
For more than 7 months, people who have been recognised as victims of trafficking in Cyprus have been let down by the competent authorities of the Republic. Basically, they have no livelihood. So they're now living under conditions of utter poverty, and many of them have ended up exclusively depending on either charity or even begging. With me from KISA, Action for Equality Support and Anti-Racism, is Doros Polikarpou. Doros, I thought that Cyprus had implemented the international standards when it came to the trafficking of human beings. What's gone wrong?
Well, we discussed this issue, I think, on several occasions. One of the main difficulties we have as a country is the implementation and to take serious when we ratify conventions or we transpose international or community law into national law, to make sure that we develop the necessary policies and the necessary infrastructure to really implement properly this legal framework. In this case, we have a new law that is last year, amended and adapting to the obligations of the country as a member of the Council of Europe, as a member of the EU. We had a new directive, that we have to transpose regarding labor trafficking in general, and we did. Unfortunately, there are difficulties, very serious difficulties, when it comes to the efficiency in praxis of the provisions of this legal framework.
And you mentioned labour briefly there as you were speaking, because we should clarify here that we're talking about all victims of trafficking. People do tend to think that humans are trafficked almost exclusively for sexual exploitation, but that's not necessarily the case. And we've got, cases of sexual trafficked people, but also a lot of people who have been here and forced labour.
Yes, these are the two main categories. Apart from this, we do have also trafficking for organs spending, or for even in a more rare situation, trafficking for forced marriages. But the main two forms of trafficking that we see in Cyprus, and recently the police also came to the conclusion, something that we repeatedly said in the past, that Cyprus might be more the labor trafficking as a form of trafficking that is more widespread than trafficking for sexual exploitation. By saying this, I don't want to put any priority or say that one is less important than the other, but these are the two main forms of trafficking that I think request from us the necessary attention in order to combat it.
Now, we are supposed, I think, to give them decent living conditions, to give them psychological and social support and welfare benefits. That seems to be where everything is falling down since the introduction of the guaranteed minimum income. What's the current situation? These people are supposedly allowed to apply for that and should be receiving it, surely?
Yes, there is. First of all, there is in the law a discriminatory provision that non-Cypriots, the Ministry of Interior, can decide to delegate the examination of these applications instead of the competent authority, the new authority for the minimum income, to the welfare services. We know the difficulties at the welfare services. There are structural difficulties. There are difficulties when it comes to staff. And this actually is part of this problem. So we have a serious difficulty right now because all the applications of victims of trafficking are transferred for examination to the welfare services. And we have this serious delay. We can say that, for every human being that is in need, it's a tragic that the Ministry of Labour did not foresee the extent of this initiative. On one hand, it's correct that we move from the public allowance to the minimum income scheme, but I think, I would say completely irresponsible that we thought we can change a so complicated system within few months, and we left many people without the necessary means at the end of the day for survival. For victims of trafficking, the situation is even worse, because it's not a matter, the minimum income here is not a matter of welfare policy that depends on the will and the national framework, legal framework. When it comes to protection of victims, is seen, first of all, is covered by international law and by community law. We violate international and community law when we deprive the rights of these people. And the protection of the victims is one of the core elements of the fight against this form of crime, the organized crime that is called trafficking. So if you cannot protect properly and support properly and defend properly the victims, is one of the indicators that you are not able to face and challenge this serious social phenomenon or this serious crime that is called trafficking. From this point of view, the consequences and the dimension is completely different if you say that a human being that is recognized as a victim of trafficking is abandoned actually and exposed to various threats because this person is not covered when it comes to social needs, the material conditions, housing, and the means for survival. Apart from this, and this is another serious obstacle in Cyprus, we have very long procedures at the court. It might take a court case for reasons that they are unacceptable actually under certain circumstances. You cannot have a trafficker who comes every 6 months to the court with a very minimal reason and ask for a new date, and then the case is postponed for 6 months. And we have cases that they are postponed again and again, and we have 3 years now, and they didn't even start the proceedings at the court. You can imagine that these people, 3 years, they are in limbo, you don't cover them properly, and in our opinion, it's one of the other very serious problems we have is that we don't have trainings or vocational training in order to support these people, to improve their skills as one of the important elements after they come out of this circle of trafficking, to be able to take a new position in the society so that they are not again exposed and vulnerable to a new circle of trafficking.
So we're talking as well about the integration there that is totally lacking. But I want to come on to the Amnesty International report on Cyprus, which I think has just come out this week. And it does say that trafficking in human beings, there are concerns raised that the police employ a definition of a victim of trafficking that Amnesty says, and I quote, fell short of international standards. Now, if we have international standards and we've ratified or transposed all these regulations, how can we have a different definition?
Well, this is an issue that we discussed at the last amendment of the law. The position of the civil society was that we need to lay down the criteria and the definition for the recognition in the law for various reasons, because there is transparency, because it's published, and because from the law deprive rights for the victims in case they are not properly evaluated. For example, they disagree on the decision that they are or they are not victims of trafficking. They have a legal way to challenge this definition or this decision by the police. What we have now is that, according to the recent amendment of the law, is the police, according to internal regulations, responsible to proceed with the definition and the recognition according to this definition of the victims. And this raises various concerns. As I said, first of all, at any moment the police can decide to change this criteria, and nobody can know or have a say if they want to do so on this procedure.
So it's a total lack of transparency, basically.
Lack of transparency and accountability, because, we can, if you don't know the criteria, and if the criteria are not there to challenge in front of competent authority, whether it's court or any other independent authority, it means that it's very dangerous that there is also mishandling of this.
Who has oversight in Cyprus for these cases? I mean, if, as I say, we've transposed the laws that we have to transpose, in theory, the infrastructure is in place. Who is ultimately responsible for making sure that it works?
Well, according to the law, the coordination of all public authorities is at the hands of the Minister of Interior directly. Is the Minister of Interior responsible to coordinate all the actions, efforts, infrastructure necessary to meet the obligations of the country concerning trafficking? Then we have the various departments. At each department we have the Welfare Service, we have the Labour Department, we have the Ministry of Health, we have the Ministry of Justice, and we have also, of course, also the Ministry of Interior. All these departments sit together in the multidisciplinary committee, and they are supposed to coordinate their efforts and develop the necessary infrastructure to do our job together.
Which, when you say to develop it, it's not there then?
It's not there. Unfortunately, there is a serious lack of infrastructure. We don't have, the law provides that, for example, victims of trafficking in general, they need to have protected housing. At the initial stage, they need to be in a shelter to be protected until they will take their decision to cooperate with the authorities. And if they cooperate with the authorities, they are then supported. And when they are ready, with the support of the authorities, then they can leave this shelter. We have only one shelter. It's a government shelter, and it's only for women victims of trafficking for sexual exploitation. So the other victims, they don't have a shelter.
So where do they go?
They go to charity organizations trying to find housing for them. They go to friends, and some of them, unfortunately, we had even a recognized victim of trafficking who was sleeping in front of the mosque, of the Omerier Mosque in Nicosia, because he did not have any place to stay.
Now, KISA sent out a press release about all of this, and you called on the Ministry of the Interior to actually, in effect, get its act together. Have you had any response?
Indirectly, directly not, but indirectly as usual. Unfortunately, our authority, they speak more with the media than with civil society organizations, but okay, we try as well to speak through the media to the ministers or to the authorities, so I can understand this on the other hand. So, yes, according to the reports in the media, both ministries, the Ministry of Interior and the Ministry of Labour, got at least alert by this press release, and they are working on the issue. I found it, to be honest, a bit, let's put a question mark and not say something worse or more critical. I was trying for the last 3 months, and I know that other NGOs were trying as well, to speak with the authorities. I made several calls, at least 50 calls to various authorities at various levels, at the level of the Office of the Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Labour, informing him that there is a serious problem here and there is a failure, giving promises, we are going to look into the issue, and nothing happened. All of a sudden, they realized that there was publicity about this, and both ministries are working on it. I hope that we will really work on it and try to find a solution on this issue, and not that we are going to, after a few days, that is not going to be in the middle of the public discussion anymore, to forget again this issue and leave the victims without the necessary support.
What solutions do you foresee?
First of all, we don't have so many victims in Cyprus. It's a small country. It's possible and it's very easy when we have a victim that all authorities will come together with the participation of civil society organizations, and they work a very practical plan how to protect this victim and what to do each of us in order to give the best possible solution and a support program for a victim. It's only few numbers. It's the political will that is missing. Repeatedly we ask at the level of the authorities to have memoranda of cooperation with the various departments to develop this cooperation And there is, I have the feeling, lack of political will from the side of the authorities, first of all, to coordinate between them properly the work, and then to coordinate their efforts with the civil society organizations as well. I think this is the most important. We don't have these huge numbers. We are not a country that is very difficult, one department to speak with the other, because we are a huge mechanism that is, we know nearly personally each other in this country. So the best thing we can do, first of all, is to agree that we have a serious responsibility towards these people, to agree that when we vote and we create legislation, we have to take it serious and make sure that we follow these laws and we implement this law in the best possible way. And I think this is one hand, to take serious the laws that we vote in.
But the bottom line is the practical steps that need to be taken.
The practical steps, I think, it's first of all, when it comes to the minimum income, it's very simple. Victims of trafficking, they should get welfare or financial support, housing, from the very first day that the authorities are aware of the possibility that they are even, the law provides that before they are recognized, they have access to social rights. And there is a reason for it, because from the very first moment, these people are very vulnerable, and the protection you are going to offer them, it will affect their wish and their will to cooperate, to fight against this crime. So it's not a coincidence that the law provides that these people are looked after from the very first moment. It's one of the few categories we have in the law where the law says that any information available that somebody is a potential victim of trafficking can even stop any effort of deportation without any other step. It's a very serious issue.
And of course you do need to put all of that in place if you want to get the victims to be brave enough to testify in court. The other problem you mentioned is the length of time it takes a lot of these cases to come to court, or at least to get to the point where the court will actually hear the case. Yes. Is there anything moving on that? Should we have a separate court sort of system where these are fast-tracked through? Because I would imagine that quite a lot of the victims, once all of that is over, do they return home or do they stay here?
The law provides that they voluntarily can return, provided that we support them with reintegration measures. It means that we have an obligation to make sure that when they return back home, if we want to return them back home, there is an infrastructure there for them, or cooperation.
So they don't end up being trafficked again?
They will end up in the hands, or they are victimized because of their cooperation with the authorities in Cyprus. And they face serious victimization against from the exploitation rings there. So these are obligations that we have even if they return. But it's true that, the best solution would have been to have specialized courts for trafficking issues, because it's very difficult, it's very specific legal framework. You need to train judges for this, you need to train prosecutors for this, and the system we have right now is completely in discredit. It means that it goes to any prosecutor available, and it goes to any judge that is available in that with a waiting list mechanism. So it's a coincidence, completely coincident who was going to be the judge, if the prosecutor is qualified enough to follow the case.
And it certainly seems that the defending attorneys are, because they seem to keep putting it off.
And this is one of these are the reasons why we have, and this is also criticized very often by international organizations, and that we don't have enough convictions of traffickers in Cyprus.
Which is hardly surprising after what we've just heard. Doros Polikarpou from KISA, Action for Equality, Support and Anti-Racism, talking to us there about the plight of victims of human trafficking in Cyprus. Well, that about wraps up this edition of the Cyprus News Digest. Many thanks for your company. Hope you'll join me next week. Till we meet again, take care and God bless. Bye-bye now.